Well, it is the 7th week of shelter in place here in Atlanta, our 6th opportunity to share some of our personal journey. In fact, it was last week when I told everyone I really needed to get a haircut. About the same time, the Georgia governor decided to open barber shops and tattoo parlors and gyms and other businesses that are now deemed essential in this state. But neither you or I feel really comfortable having other people that close to us right now. So I did it. I took the plunge. I cut my hair. Wow, and you're still actually willing to be seen with me in public.
Sure, I mean, we're wearing face masks, so you could shave it all off and I'd still be willing to go out as long as I had that face mask on.
Oh, well, thank you for that vote of confidence.
So you can take your hat off?
Not just yet, maybe toward the end. But it is interesting that I had invited you to try your hand at cutting my hair and you refused, apparently growing out of a not so positive experience that you had as a girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in high school and one of my brothers asked me to cut his hair. In fact, he was pretty insistent and said it was easy and I wouldn't have any problem. And I didn't want to do it, but I ended up cutting his hair and the results were not very good. And I decided I would never cut anybody's hair ever again.
Ever again. Well, not a bad segue into what we want to share with you today, because during moments of crisis like this one, all of us are being pushed out of our comfort zone. We're being called upon to do things that we aren't feeling very capable of doing. We're being called upon to exercise new skill sets. Sometimes that motivation comes from within. A lot of times there's people on the outside pressuring us to do things. And we actually found a verse this past week which addresses that and gives us some real hope.
Yeah, our passage for today is Ephesians 2:10. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them.
Psychologists tell us that one of the things that really pushes us out of our comfort zone during moments of crisis and makes us feel more vulnerable is the fact that we are pushed outside of our routines and we are not allowed to work in our normal areas of competency. And what's interesting about that is if we're not careful, it can actually move us to the point of questioning our identity and beginning to wonder even why we're here on earth. And I love then the way that this verse begins, because God makes this important declaration: for you are God's workmanship. Wow. That Greek word for workmanship, years later we would get our word poem from that in English. So a poet is someone who is a craftsman with words. This was a word used for craftsmen back in the ancient Near East, of those who could take something and make something truly worthwhile, something of value, something beautiful. And that's what God is affirming that he has done. And it leads me to ask this question today: when we look at ourselves in the mirror during this moment of crisis, what is it that we see? I mean, we are people whose world has been turned upside down, who are being called upon to pursue plans that we did not know were going to be on the radar for us. We're not necessarily working in our area of giftedness. We have no idea how long this is going to last. And if we were able to pull back the skin and sort of look at the person underneath for a moment, would we see this disheveled person who's a bit out of sorts? Or would we be able to declare with God, we are his workmanship?
Yeah. And yet Paul doesn't leave us standing in front of the mirror, admiring our new selves. We are his workmanship, but we are created in Christ Jesus for good works. So it might seem strange that Paul focuses on works right here when he just finished earlier in the passage insisting that we can't do works to earn God's favor. But these he calls good works, and they're contrasted to the other works that he talks about: the works of the law, works of the flesh, dead works, things that we might do that can't save us. Through Christ we are recreated for works. Just like I have a new identity, I now have a new purpose: to do the works that adorn the gospel of Jesus Christ.
And he doesn't even leave it there. He goes a bit further. I find this so interesting. God isn't just declaring that he's created us for good works. but somehow in eternity past, he has envisioned and foreordained what those good works are to be.
Yeah, and just unlike what happened with my brother and the haircut, God, through his Spirit, empowers us to do what he asks us to do. In fact, 2 months ago, if you had said I'd be sitting in front of this video doing a devotional, I would have said, "You're crazy."
But now there's some debate here. As you might imagine, did God actually foreordain the exact works that each of us is to be doing? What do we do to occupy our day to bring honor to Him? Or is He talking more in a general sense of the good moral works that He wants us to do? Sort of like what He outlines in chapters 4 to 6 of this same book. I don't think we're going to resolve that today, but what I think we can say with confidence is that in eternity past, the same God who chose me in Him and who determined that I would be part of His masterpiece also determined that there are good works that I would be able to occupy, that I can pursue regardless of the circumstances that I'm living in.
Yeah, wow, I really need to hear that. It helps me to not think of this period of uncertainty as a parenthesis in God's plan or like I'm in a holding pattern until things get back to normal. Just as I am certain of my identity in Christ, I can be certain that there are good works that He wants me to do. But we have to look at the final phrase, that we should walk in them. And this reminds us that we aren't simply robots who are programmed to do His will. Our responsibility is to choose each day to walk in those good works, to seek them, to identify them, and to do them.
So God has foreordained those works. We know that we've been created for those good works, but we, I guess, are making a conscious choice. I love the journey metaphor that Paul uses here and in other places, especially the idea of walking, because it gives us that idea of a conscious choice. To walk, I have to get up, I have to fix my mind on a destination, I have to put one foot in front of the other. And that's just as true when I've mapped out my journey ahead of time as when I'm on journeys with lots of unknowns like this one. A couple of years ago, you and I made the conscious decision that we were going to watch our weight more closely. We were going to exercise, get some good muscle tone, and actually we've been rather successful at that. We're pleased with the results. But just the last couple of days, I needed to work outside the house using the same muscles, which are in pretty good shape right now, but to do different kinds of physical work, to pull weeds and to trim bushes and to haul things from one place to the other. And it's fascinating how those muscles are feeling pretty sore. In fact, getting up this morning, almost feeling a little bit clumsy because of that. Isn't that interesting that even though I've sought to tone myself up and to be in better shape, I'm now I'm calling upon those muscles to do something rather different, and that's making me feel a bit out of sorts. I'm guessing something a bit similar is happening with us today as we pursue good works outside of our normal routine, outside of our strategic plans and our preferences. We may feel a bit awkward during this period. We may develop some sore gifting muscles, and we may even have some new calluses, but Ephesians 2:10 says we can do it.
So our encouragement to you this week is to remember that you're the workmanship of a master creator, however you might feel today, and that before time began, He created you for good works, which He planned for you, even some that might fall outside of your comfort zone.
We can do it.
Now, are you going to take off your hat?
Not too bad, right? Not too bad.